friends, today's video is going to be a journal video, so if this is up your alley, I'm glad you're here. I get a lot of questions on Tumblr and comments about advice for journaling beginners. Today's video is going to be all about people who want to get into journaling, or perhaps maybe already have, but they just want tips on how to do it better, more often, whatever the case may be. And I don't have any notes for this video, so it's just gonna be me spitting stuff out, telling you the laws of the land. My biggest advice that I end up telling people, and the number one thing I say to people who express any concern about entering in a journal, is that there's not any format or time schedule that you need to adhere to. Your journal is completely your own workspace. You are the controller of how often you enter, what you write about, what things you want to put inside of it, where you want to store it, if you're comfortable sharing it with other people, or if they're going to be very private thoughts to you. There are clearly a lot of different types of journals. You could have an art journal, you could have a daily entry journal, you could have a prompt journal, you could have a list journal. I could go on an entire other video about types of journals if you want ideas for things to do in journals, but also don't feel pressure to do a certain type of thing. You should sit back and tell yourself, what am I journaling for? Do you want to journal in order to relieve stress or anxiety? Do you want to do it for memories in the future? Do you want to do it to express yourself? Do you want to do it because you want to keep some of the memories and scraps of paper that you get? You can do all of these things in one, surely, I do that, or you could dedicate separate journals to these, which I find could be a little bit complex and difficult if you're first journaling. So really sit down with yourself and think what you want the outcome of this journal to be. Mainly for me, it's something that I want to be able to look back on in the future and see how I was doing at that point in time. Additional to that, there's also the entries I have that just help me relieve stress and help me work things out in my life, or rant or complain or whatever I need to do that day. And in that way, it's sort of a stress reliever, which I think any type of journal you keep is gonna be a stress reliever. It's gonna keep your mind occupied. It's gonna be getting the creative juices flowing. But I do know of people that write journals and then destroy those journals as a symbol of letting go of negative thoughts. Again, I could make an entire video about different types of journals you want to do, but once you figure out what you want to do, keep it in your head. Remind yourself daily, every single time you sit down to write, you are not ever required to write, and you don't ever have to feel pressured to write a certain amount about a certain thing, etc. I hear of a lot of people saying that they start journals, then never continue them, and that makes them feel bad. They hate their handwriting. They buy pretty journals, but they never use them. Honestly, the number one thing that's hard to combat is feeling like you can't do it. You have to accept the mindset that it's not gonna write itself. You get older every single day. There's no one judging you except you. I think it's so much more worth it to have incoherent, stupid, petty, irregular journal entries than to have nothing at all. So if you sit down with a journal and think it just seems so lame, you don't like what you're doing, you want to tear out the pages, don't. I guarantee you, in 10 years, when this journal resurfaces, you're going to be so grateful that you even put effort at all into something that you can look back on in the future. You can buy journals from a lot of different sources, from like Walmart to online. It really depends on what type of journal you want. Some people buy lined journals for daily entries just because obviously if you want somewhere to write, it's nice and pretty there. But also a lot of people do use unlined journals. These are great if you wanted to glue in pictures, or you just want more creative freedom to draw things and put your own twist on where you want words to be, gluing in pictures and stuff like that. I have yet to venture into that side of journaling. I've always stuck with my lined journals because I like the look and the aesthetic of having things in a straight line. However, I have a friend named Jenna who does have an unlined journal, and hers looks amazing. I'm actually gonna brag about her a little bit because I really like her journal. I don't know if she's done a journaling video. If she has, I'll link it down below. She has an unlined journal that she uses to do several different things. For example, anytime she meets someone, such as an author or any internet friends, she has them sign it or write in it. I've done this before and I think it's a fantastic idea. She always writes down song playlists. She always does quotes from books. And her journal is, I think, a really good example for any of us, and I think actually any journal can just give you inspiration as far as what you want to write about. So journal flip-throughs, highly recommended to get creative juices flowing. It's just an example of a journal that does not have one strict aspect to it. So what I'm trying to emphasize is that you don't need to go into writing a journal thinking it has to be this, it has to be that, I have to do it this often, it has to look like this, I have to finish it in this certain amount of time, I have to enter this often. There's no restrictions, no guidelines, no requirements when you start a journal. I used to feel so guilty whenever I would skip a day of writing, or if I would have a page that looks bad, but now, as you can see in my current journal flip-throughs, sometimes I go a week without writing and I feel bad going back to my journal thinking now I I have to talk about what I did in that time and compensate for it. But then I realized if I ever miss days of journaling, I can just pick up where I am. I don't have to recap what's happened in the past unless I want to. I got a couple questions from my last journaling video, so I thought I would address this now. My current journal is this one. It is from Target, and it says notebook, and it has a little marble cover, and it's hardback. I'm debating the idea of keeping this one a strictly me journal, so I won't be posting pictures of this one anywhere online because I've been going through a rough time with anxiety lately, and this semester has been really had its toll on my mental health and stress levels. So I was contemplating if I just wanted to keep this private. It's kind of boring so far because it's all writing and just gluing stuff in, so there's not really any creative aspects that anyone might be able to draw from this. Getting back to beginner's advice, you can journal with the most basic materials. I feel like a lot of people think that journaling means you have to have like your fountain pen and leather-bound journal, which is completely a myth. I mean, half the time when I journal, I just grab like a pen that I can't even find the lid for and scribble the first thing that comes to mind. You don't have to decorate your pages. You don't have to have pretty washi tape. You don't have to feel like you need to go out and buy the first fine liners you see or get all these materials and stickers and pretty stuff, which of course if you want to do an art journal, maybe build your way up to that. But in the beginning, it can just be you, a pencil, and a piece of paper. I recommend starting your journal with a bit of an about me. This is what I did whenever I got into journaling, and it's what I recommend to everyone who I have convinced to start journaling. Go through with like a 5 or 10 page explanation of your life. Some people are good at that and they just jump into it, but if you're not sure what to write about, say how old you are, your name, what's happening in your life at the moment, things you're doing, grades you're in, what job you have, friends you have, the colors you like, the food you eat, the things you do on a daily basis, things that annoy you, things that you're sad about, things you're hoping for, things you're looking forward to, just all the things that are happening right now that define you as a person, because whenever you go back to that and reread it, you're gonna have a clear and vivid memory of yourself. And now that I think about this, I kind of want to do this more often, not just at the beginning of your first journal. Maybe every year or so, put a new description of who I am, what I'm doing, because I know since I've started journaling, I've been to college. I'm in college, and I think that'd be really interesting to talk about now what it's like to be in college, because it's 4 years out of my, what, 80-something-year-old life. I want to be able to remember these years, and these videos are a really good way to document my life, but not necessarily all my inner thoughts. So whenever I'm doing a daily entry, here's how I recommend it. Always put the date. I was just asked recently on Twitter, do I date my journal entries? And I feel like that was kind of a given, but now I realize not everyone might do it, but I highly recommend putting a date on there. Always whenever I sit down to do a journal entry, I talk about the first thing that comes to mind. If nothing comes to mind, I go through from morning to the point that I'm sitting in my chair writing, talk about everything I did that day. Along the way, I'll definitely pinpoint something to talk about, maybe something that's annoyed me recently or state of mind that I've been in. In my journal, I really like to focus on topics that are about problems that I'd like to resolve or things that I am striving for. So a lot of my journal right now is talking about like my anxiety that I have, but also things that I'm doing to make that better and things that I'm looking forward to. My journals are sort of a documentation for self-betterment, and I think it's going to be really interesting to reread them and see if I've achieved all the things that I've written about in the past. I've done a journaling video about supplies you should have, so if you're a new journaler and you only have your journal and a pencil, I'll link that video down below so you can see what types of things that I use to fill up my journals, especially more artsy pages. The number one thing I want to instill in you, the one thing you should get out of this video though, is that there is absolutely no restrictions on your journaling life. Write whenever you feel like it, even if that's once a month. Write about whatever you want to, even if it's just the color of the shoes you wore. Write whatever length you feel appropriate, even if it's 2 sentences. Do not feel any sort of pressure to make this huge, jam-packed journal completely full of stuff. So hopefully today you've learned some things and I've inspired you to be less fearful of picking up journaling or more inspired to continue journaling. I have an entire journaling playlist if you'd like to get inspiration, such as journal flip-throughs and supplies and a bunch of good stuff. I'll link that down below if you're interested. Thanks everyone for watching, hope you're having a wonderful life, and I will see you next time. Goodbye!